And away we go. It's the DFS Alert presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford and Adam Scher along with you on this Thursday morning, getting you ready for a two-game NBA slate. What the hell? Adam, I get it when you're up against, I guess there's NFL football, but why 2 games? Who was the scheduler maker? Did Helen Keller get employed? What happened?
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. It was so nice last week where everything was, 6 to 8 games. I don't even mind the bigger slates like the 11 gamers yesterday, but just do better than 2 games.
2 games, and we have honestly a ton of injuries for 14 active players per team, 28 or whatever, 56 players. There's a decent amount of question marks.
24 of them are out.
Yeah, already we're going to be dealing with value that we can talk about. We'll go game by game. Not shocking there, I hope, to talk about these two on this Thursday morning. But I did want to take the moment. We have Adam. We have time. So I did want to ask, we're in November of the NBA season. It's been about a month. Baseball is far behind us. NFL is churning, obviously. There's still a lot of people who are new to DFS, maybe new to this podcast, new to Awesemo.com. And there are a lot of dumb questions out there. And everyone always says, there's no such thing as a dumb question. There are. Dumb questions exist. We all admit them. They happen. We like to be nice to people. But I think more so, though, what's sort of the prevalent question you get about NBA specifically, not DFS, but NBA specifically, from somebody who might be new, somebody who might be trying out NBA for the first time, that you think is, 1, relevant, and 2, one that is pretty easily answered that maybe we can talk about here briefly at the top?
Yeah, I think there's 2 that stand out. One being questions about Fantasy Cruncher. Obviously, that's the optimizer.
Thank you, Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah, thank you, It's the optimizer I prefer. It's the one that I've used, especially as long as I've been mass entering. But there's a misconception that it's only useful for people that max enter tournaments, and that it's not useful for other people. If you're someone that hand builds lineups and your process is to basically go through and look at projections and build the best lineup you can, and then make some edits based on ownership, using Fantasy Cruncher or an optimizer, whatever one. Again, I prefer Fantasy Cruncher, but that's what an optimizer is. That's all it does, is build that lineup for you, save you time. And so answering the do you recommend using an optimizer or building by hand is just one of those where it's just I don't know, do you value your time? Use an optimizer no matter how many lineups you're making. And then also just the one about I haven't won in 3 days. There's less variance in basketball, but that's the case for everybody. Everybody's lineups tend to be better. And as with all DFS sports, you're going to have losing streaks. I personally am off to a god-awful start to this NBA season. I don't think it has a whole lot to do with my ability as a DFS player. It just has to do with how the season's gone. But yeah, you're going to have streaks where you lose more than 2, 3, 4 days in a row. It happens. So it's definitely a tie between some people win every night. No, they don't. How do I win every night? And also, how do I build the best lineups without using an optimizer?
Yeah, so I think everyone is well aware that I do not play at the level of any of the other guys here at Awesemo. Maybe 1 or 2 guys who are on the back end of the site. I play for fun. I play to host the show, and I play because I've been playing for about 7 years now. But if you are in this to have fun and build hand-built lineups and enjoy the build of drafting a fantasy team every day, and there are those people out there, do it. Have fun, right? That is completely on you. This is your discretionary fund. Maybe instead of buying a 6-pack or going to a movie, you decide to play a couple lineups. Absolutely. Have fun with it. Promote that here at Awesemo as well. We have projections. We have all things you can use, the lineup builder page. But even further, if you are trying to do this to be profitable, do the things that make other people profitable. To Adam's point, use the tools that are showing people the way. Think of 4 years ago when optimizers, and I think it was 4 years ago, Salil and the whole controversy around AI coming into DFS. It's now prevalent. It's everywhere. So clearly, it's something that people lean on. And I think what Adam's point is, and what I'll say about any optimizer, I made the joke about thank you, Fantasy Cruncher. For those who don't know, go search some Twitter. But I think the fact of the matter is, and I love you guys. I love you. Absolutely. But I think the fact of the matter is you need to learn the tool, right? Like you need
Yeah.
to learn how it works and learn how to make it your own and to know the ins and outs and to how to leverage certain spots and how to get random on certain spots and ownership percentages and all those things. So I
Yeah.
think hopefully this gives some of those new listeners, new players an idea of, yes, if you can play MME, if you can multi-enter, if you can go max entry, then you should be doing it. You should be using a site like Fantasy Cruncher and a tool like Fantasy Cruncher, which we obviously have available to everyone as an add-on at Awesemo. If you're hand building for fun, just enjoy it. Don't try to mix the streams there. Don't cross the streams, as the Ghostbusters once famously said. Just enjoy what you're doing. Play, build your lineups. Maybe 1 out of 50 instead of 1 out of 7 will be winners, and you can have some fun with that as well. And
to piggyback real quick on that, like that's why I'm so I guess why I consider that like a, for lack of a better word, dumb question. Like 4 years ago, like I was in law school playing, 5 to 10 lineups a night.
right.
And I don't even know if Fantasy Cruncher existed. If it did, I didn't use it. But I was building everything by hand and I was taking like 2 hours to like do all this. And it was kind of fun, but like it also was very inefficient. So that's why I'm just like even if you're building 5 to 10 lineups and you're trying to make money and have the best lineups you can, just use something like that. If you enjoy the hand building, like you said, then by all means. But that's why I'm so like, I don't know, like even if you're playing 5 lineups, like if I had the ability to just understand even what an optimizer was at that time, but also use one, like I would have saved a lot of time.
And to piggyback on your piggyback, if you have your own projections, you should be optimizing. Like if you are dealing in those numbers anyway, and you are dealing with the sort of lineup construction therein, you are skipping a very important step if you're not using an optimizer.
Right.
If you're simply quote unquote doing the eyeball test using gut, maybe you watch some game film, maybe you have access to that, and you're hand building, then fun. I don't use projections. I have fun building lineups. That's a lie. I do use projections when I'm playing a serious slate. Like if I have a time on a Friday and I'm into it, I use Osmo's projections. I talk to Adam, I talk to Dave, I talk to all these guys, and I build a ton more lineups. If I'm just building a lineup before a slate starts, then I'm not going with the projections. I'm building off eyeballs on matchups on what I think is the best spot. Maybe I'm looking at over-unders. I'm looking at pace of play, and then I'm building a lineup based off that. If you have your own projections or you're working with projections, I would highly recommend that you make sure to stick with the amount that you are doing. So let's talk through a 2-game slate, which is going to be a little bit of a disaster because of injuries, right? I think we have to talk about at the top here, no Dame Lillard. You have no, was it Derek Favors? No Josh Hart, almost said Corey Hart, which would have been an EMAC reference that not many people would have gotten.
I remember him.
Sunglasses at night.
Wait, no, baseball player.
Oh, well, yeah. Jesus. Yeah. That too. Yes. And yeah, well, that's amazing. Corey Hart was an 80s singer who sang, I Wear My Sunglasses at Night.
Oh, yeah.
Corey Hart, the baseball player.
I've heard the song, but I didn't realize that was Corey Hart.
Yeah. So there you have it. And I just aged myself about 10 years.
I was like, what do you mean? Like, you didn't think I knew who Corey Hart was?
Brewers, right? He was on the Brewers for
yeah.
This is off to a rocking start. Lonzo Ball, I believe, is questionable. But with the hip injury and he's missed the last 6 games, who knows? Rubio, I believe, is also still questionable, but leaning doubtful because of his back injury. So let's go game by game. We'll hit on what we can hit on. I don't know that we have totals anywhere. I'll try to find some as we go through here. But Adam, taking the early game first, that is Portland and Milwaukee. The Bucks. Are both teams on a back-to-back here? Well, hold on one second.
Milwaukee is, Portland's not.
Okay, so Milwaukee is, Portland's not. And you have a situation where the Milwaukee Bucks went 135 to 127 over the Hawks as a win, 33-11-4 for Giannis in that victory. A game that the Hawks pushed them enough that Giannis played enough minutes that you maybe question what happens here. But where do you see this game breaking down? Does it have to be wow, I didn't know Simons was questionable as well.
Neither did I.
Anthony Simons, and yes, it is Simons for everyone listening. So
Oh, Whiteside's questionable too.
Is it a CJ McCollum game? Yeah, it has to be, right? Like that's all we have left for the Portland Trailblazers. What do you got here? How do you see this breaking down, and what would you be looking at throughout the day on Thursday?
So first off, I just caught the Carmelo Anthony quote. He was promised a starting gig and sizable role in Portland. That was something that was established out of the gate. Anthony said of his expected role with the Trailblazers. So yeah, props to Melo. Like, go out there, drop a -20 when every other player on the team's in the positives, and immediately qualified that you were promised a big role in the team. But yeah, it's going to be a mess with Portland. Lillard out, Simons questionable. If Simons is out, you should get more minutes for Gary Trent, which is something that I didn't expect to say in November. Obviously, more productivity for McCollum, more ball handling for Kent Bazemore. It's the Simons news is obviously huge because if he's in, he should play like 34, 36 minutes.
Right.
He's still 4,700 on DraftKings, which at the very least is a really good cash play if for whatever reason you're playing cash on a 2-game slate. And he'd be a good play anywhere. Kent Bazemore, a little bit cheaper, is going to be a good option regardless because he should play big minutes. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Melo played 24 minutes last game. I guess that's going to go up no matter how bad he is. So price tag didn't move. He'll be a reasonable option. Not for anyone else on the team. He won't help anyone else, but he can get his.
And you have Rodney Hood. There's a bunch of cheap guys who can score here, right? Between Trent and Carmelo and Rodney Hood.
Nasir Little could double in 18 minutes. He did it last game.
Right. Nasir Little, I think, is one to point out. So it's not that a 2-game slate is devoid of value, right? We're going to have options here that allow us to get to the Giannis's of the world on the other side. I assume Giannis at 10-6 seems more than reasonable. Price dip of sorts here from 11-3 or he was 11-3 or upwards of that on Wednesday night slate. But anything from the Milwaukee side that stands out to you as worthwhile for at least thinking through how to construct a 2-game slate lineup on Thursday?
Anything that sticks out?
Yep.
If Whiteside's out, then play a lot of Scal.
Okay, so Scal for Portland, but from the Milwaukee side, do you have anybody from?
I mean, Giannis averages 1.8 points per minute without Middleton on the floor. He sucked last night. He sucked like every time I've rostered him this year, but he should still play 34 to 36 minutes. His price tag's down to 10-6 on DraftKings, which is ridiculous. So Giannis should be in every cash lineup and probably a lot of GPP lineups. But also, if you're looking like to go deeper than that, Bledsoe's salary came down a little bit. He was in some foul trouble last night, but he should play 30 to 32 minutes. His usage goes up a little bit without Middleton. Brooke Lopez should play about 30 minutes at 5,400. DiVincenzo's down to 4,400. Those are all guys you can look to as secondary options.
I completely understand where you're coming from, and I'm not trying to speak ill towards you, but Giannis, in his sucking, went 12 of 17 from the floor, had 33 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. I understand he did not fulfill the high upside you were looking for in DFS, but just throwing out that he had a pretty damn good game.
Yeah, so he had like 58 DraftKings points in 36 minutes? Yeah, so he averaged 1.6 points per minute. His average without Middleton on the floor since last year is 1.82, so he sucked.
He left points on the damn floor. Let's talk about this New Orleans-Phoenix game where who the hell knows what's going to happen, because this New Orleans team has no one of it. Well, that's a lie. I hope everybody understands that's a lie. But Favors is out. Hart is out. You have Lonzo Ball, questionable. I'd be shocked if he played. On the other side, Rubio, questionable, leaning doubtful. And then I think Dario Saric is also with a Q tag because of a knee injury.
Saric is probable.
All right, so they don't have probable in the NBA anymore, right? Like they just made it a Q tag and made it even
That
worse.
was the NFL.
Oh, that was the NFL. All right,
Yeah.
fine.
The only reason I know he's probable is I got an alert to my phone at like 6:54, getting ready for like the 7 o'clock lock on an 11-game slate. Dario Saric probable tomorrow. It's like, cool.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I know exactly which website did that, but we will not speak ill here on the podcast. How do you break this one down? It seems like one that should have a pretty high total to teams that can get up and down the floor. Don't always, but can do so. Anybody stand out to you in particular in this one? Prices are somewhat suppressed here on a 2-game slate by DK. And again, something to Adam before we start recording. There's an $8 tournament that has over has $375, $375,000 to speak clearly and in proper English. That's a lot of money for a 2-game slate. And obviously, they're the quote unquote record week over there on DK. But anything stand out to you from this contest or where you see yourself leaning with all the potential injuries?
Devin Booker. Assuming Rubio's out, he should be really good. His usage is down like 4 to 5% this year. His assist percentage is down like 5 to 6 points. And a lot of that has to do with Rubio. So while he's been a really, really good Booker, has been a really good NBA player, he's been really efficient. Rubio's helped out a lot in that regard. It hasn't translated to DFS, but if Rubio's out, you should get a lot more of just Booker with the ball in his hands being an inefficient shooter, but you don't lose points for missed shots. You just get them for made shots. So him taking a bunch more is really good. I think you saw it even on Tuesday. I know at one point I looked, and with Rubio in, Booker was at like 7 fantasy points in the second quarter. And then when I woke up on Wednesday, I looked and Booker had finished with 51 points. And I was just like, oh, that's weird. And then I saw that Rubio didn't play at all in the second half, and it made a lot more sense. I think that you should see, monster upside from Booker if Rubio's out. The matchup's appealing. New Orleans plays fast. They don't play very well defensively. Jrue Holiday is an excellent defender on his own, but as a team, they're not that good defensively. Kelly Oubre is a fine secondary option. And then in the front court, has Baines already been ruled out?
I have not seen fully. Let's see if I can find any new news there. Latest I see, yeah, he'll remain out with the hip injury.
Okay, so you should get a bunch of minutes from Frank Kaminsky, which is nice. It definitely doesn't hurt.
Is it really nice? Is it nice?
It's a guy you can roster that probably will disappoint, but his salary actually dropped. So Frank Kaminsky was $5K on Tuesday with Baines in until the last minute. He's now 4,600. Sorry, I can't read. DraftKings doing what DraftKings does, dropping players when they're going to get more minutes. So yeah, Frank Kaminsky is a clear, like, if you're playing cash games for whatever reason on the slate, play Frank Kaminsky. Play him in tournaments too. He's a good option, obviously. Saric is only 5K. His minutes certainly aren't hurt by Baines being out. He should play at least like 30 to 32 minutes. If Rubio is out, Javon Carter should play around 24 minutes, which isn't likely to be very productive, but with it being a 2-game slate, 3,300 for Carter or even 3,700 for Tyler Johnson is fine.
All right. That is that from the Phoenix side. New Orleans, do you want to take any guesses where minutes go?
If we assume Ball's out, you should get minutes for Jackson and Alexander Walker. I don't really know how they're going to go. Like the one thing you can be confident in is that Jackson Hayes should get minutes. He's still cheap. It's a pretty nice spot against Frank Kaminsky. Jrue Holiday and Brandon Ingram are underpriced because somehow their prices dropped on DraftKings from last game when Ingram was already 50%.
I think DK specifically just priced this as a one-off. Like they priced this specifically. I think there's a lot of price manipulation on this slate specifically because it's a 2-game slate.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're going to run a tournament that has...
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, just whatever. DraftKings has been a joke all year. And I say that as someone that absolutely loves DraftKings, and yeah, it's been frustrating, and this is no different.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. We will dovetail quickly here. I think my big thing about New Orleans that I wanted to ask you specifically is, do you have a strong take on Jrue Holiday, and is there another guard slash small forward in this roster that you think has the upside on this slate to make a difference?
So I do go back to Drew Holiday because assuming ball's out, he's still gonna have the ball in his hands a ton. Like Ingram cuts into his usage, but Drew still runs the offense, and his price tag came down. If you look at the rest of the slate, like Eric Bledsoe is the pivot because the thing is, like Portland doesn't have. I mean, Portland has McCollum, but he's gonna have tons of ownership, probably more than Holiday. So he's not a pivot. You don't have Lillard. The Suns have Booker, who Booker's 8,500, Drew is 8,200. If Rubio's out and Booker somehow is getting less ownership than Drew, by all means play Booker. But I assume that Drew is actually going to be the pivot because Booker is obvious, McCollum's obvious, Bledsoe is a different price range anyway. So if that's the case, then like I love Drew. But yeah, if Drew's getting a bunch of ownership and Booker isn't, then go to Booker.
Over on Yahoo DFS, don't forget they're a sponsor here of this podcast. You can check them out, sports.yahoo.com, and then go to the daily fantasy section. Check out their offerings. They do have a $25K baller, $5K to first place. It's a $10 entry, 12% management fee. You can get in for pretty easy access to their product and obviously pretty good UI that you can pretty easily manipulate when you're trying to set your lineups, but you have all of these question marks over there. The price points go from 57 for Giannis to 39 for Ingram. Drew Holiday is 37, Booker is 35. Different price points, but does a $57 price point scare you off of Giannis? Does it just become such an easy way to build a balanced lineup that maybe Giannis goes under-owned over on a site like Yahoo?
It's really dependent on how their value looks. Normally you can find some really good like $10 to $12 options. I'm looking at their pricing right now. It actually is there's not a whole lot down at the bottom, probably because it's a 2-game slate. But yeah, I mean you have like you have Melo for $10, you have Tyler Johnson, George Hill for $10, Nasir Little for 11. Anthony Simons is 12. I almost said Simmons because you have stuck in my head now. It shouldn't be that hard to get to Giannis. Kaminsky's 13. Hayes is 13. Simons is 12. JJ Redick is 12. Yeah, it really shouldn't be that hard to get Giannis into your lineups.
All right. So the question I was going to ask, and this is where we can close off, how much, and you have gotten more and more professional, I mean that as a compliment, when it comes to DFS and understanding the intricacies of lineup construction.
All aspects of life, not just
DFS. Amazing. But understanding, so there was a former coworker of ours, the draft cheat, who explained to me once.
You didn't have to say that. I was going to tell you who it was.
Who explained through like how pricing affects DFS lineup construction, that if pricing is perfect, then everyone would have the same lineup, right? So if the pricing was absolutely spot on and accurate 100%, then everyone should have the same exact lineup because of the way optimizers work and the way projections work. How something like a frustration around DraftKings, does that play into your construction at all, or is it just simply sort of trying to churn and getting that continual frustration that pricing is off in the way that you see it?
I'm not like doing dumb shit because their pricing is so bad. Like it's basically just that when the pricing is as bad as it has been for most of this year, even on like some of the 8-game slates we had last week, for example, you just had 60% owned guys, and it basically increases variance when you're already playing really, really top heavy tournaments where you have to get lucky. You have to get super lucky any given night to win. But the whole idea is that over the course of a year, you put yourself in the position to get lucky a few times and you have a really good year. When the pricing is so bad that every idiot can figure out the right person to play, it makes it really, really hard. It just increases the variance because like if every player is $1,000 too cheap, there's not really an edge to saying just to grab two names that I'm looking at right now, like Drew Holiday versus Devin Booker. If they're both $1,000 too cheap, there's not really an edge. Like you can guess which one's gonna have the better game, but good luck. But if like Devin Booker is $300 too cheap and Drew Holiday's $1,000 too cheap, and that's the case like every slate with plays like that, the sharper players are going to make more money over time. But that's the sites have to do a better job of pricing for that to work. If everyone is just way too cheap, you still get spread out ownership to some extent, which I know from talking to people at DraftKings in the past is something that they think is good. But there's different ways to accomplish it. And when it's just like everyone is too cheap, it makes it really hard for the better players to actually have an advantage.
We and that's what we want all of you to be, is better players. We don't want to make it sound like the more seasoned players. No, just the better players, the smarter players, the people doing the work and putting in the time.
As someone that has to answer like 2v2 and 3v3 questions from subscribers, I would like the pricing to be sharper, just so I can say like definitively, I think this is better.
Yes.
But when the pricing is just everyone's too cheap, it's like this trio that's going to score 98 points or this trio that's going to score 95. Pick one.
Yep.
It's just like,
I will say I was blown away in I was in the $4 tournament over on DK on Wednesday night, and Luka Doncic was 41.3% owned. Now, I wanted to roster Doncic. I did in a couple of lineups, but that number is gigantic for this big a slate. Like, it's just such a big number. And then you realize that the price point probably was just still too low. Like, people are realizing that he's putting up monster numbers, and the matchup was 142 to 94 was the final score in that game. But it's insane that these ownership percentages are as high as they are. And Lofty and I have talked about it since we've been doing podcasts together. DK clearly takes into consideration ownership percentage for how they price the players. Like, it's clearly part of the algorithm, clearly part of how they go about their business, that on corresponding slates as they go forward, if a player is lower owned, they figure things out. If he's higher owned, they figure things out, and things get bumped in different ways. But that's going to do it for a 2-game slate. And I probably went on longer than we even intended. But don't forget, Early Bird is a promo code you can use to get 50% off your first month over at Osmo.com. There are projections. There are ownership projections. There are rankings. There are all sorts of things you can do behind the paywall. In front of the paywall, there's our YouTube channel, which some of you are watching this episode of the DFS Early Bird on. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. Be sure to hit the alarm bell as well. That lets you know when we go live. If you're listening on any of the podcasting apps, leave a comment there as well. We love reading them. We really appreciate it. It does help with SEO and getting us to the top of the charts. When it comes to DFS podcasts, let's be honest, I don't think there's a better one out there. I'm a little bit biased, but going to say that. Find Adam on Twitter at ChipMyMoneyDFS. Don't forget, his DMs are open, so feel free to send him some.
Also, trying to catch EMEC real quick. So feel free to send me DMs, but read the disclaimer in the Twitter bio if you meet the qualifications, by all means.
But that's fair. By all means, listen, read the rules and play by the rules, and you'll be fine. It's what I used to say about season-long baseball. Like, know the rules you're playing by. If you're playing head-to-head, like, read the rules. Adam has set the rules of the road. Follow them, and you will be fine. Find me if you so choose. I'll be honest, there's a lot of political talk of late, so you may not want to follow me. At Dan Strafford.
Before the political talk, it wasn't that great either.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, let's be honest. I'm a 30-year-old father of 3 girls. It's not a pretty sight. I tweeted the other day about chocolate chip cookies. That's where my life's at. Nonetheless, find Osmo at Osmo_com. Of course, there's the individual sports as well. Osmo NBA, Osmo NFL. Tons of giveaways. You'll want to follow them and make sure that you're following to get a free subscription to Osmo.com. With that said, we wish you the best of luck every slate. We wish you the best of luck on this 2-game slate on Thursday. We'll find you back here on Friday morning. Dave Loughran and myself right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.